Hello, everybody. Bit of a special video for you today. There's someone in the community that you might recognise is always usually there in the chats and the streams that we do. I've got with me Trey Woodward. Hello, sir.
Hi, sir.
Hi, sir. No matter how many times I see that, it always makes me laugh. It's just the kind of nervous kind of way he blurts it out. It's almost cartoon-like, isn't it? It's
That
quite.
that it's almost like your girlfriend's dad walks in on you. It's a weird experience, but
Yeah.
well, your girlfriend's a 13-year-old girl, so it's quite strange.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up well. So I did a video. I can't remember what it was, but you contacted me and said that you had kind of different opinions about kind of what I was leaning towards. I kind of generally try and really look into the psychology, the deep psychology of it and the spirituality behind people's behaviour, and specifically Lorne. Hence why I've made hundreds of videos about the guy. Um, I believe from a certain perspective, everything is perspective. It's like even though I have certain truths that I cling to and things that I believe, that there's no absolute truth behind it. It is still all a perspective. And I said that I think that Lorne's bizarre sort of condition, mental condition is because of is what's happened to him in the past, poor decisions he's made. It's kind of nurture rather than nature, which is what we're talking about. So you kind of don't agree with everything that I've said, do you? Really?
No, I don't believe it's strictly nurture. I believe there's a balance to everything. There's a balance in the force, Andy.
Oh, of course there is. No, I mean I kind of agree with that. Really, I don't believe it's all down to you know um, all down to nurture. He does have the ability to change, but he kind of it's a strange paradox, really. He kind of does and he doesn't. I'll see if I can explain it as best as I can and see if you agree with me. But just before we get down to it, do you just want to? I always ask people like when they come on here for the first time and whatnot, how they sort of stumbled across this community and TCAP, for instance. Did you start watching lawn videos specifically? What was it?
Um, Actually, what actually got me into pornography, I have to say, you're the person that did that. The original show was off the air by the time I was 11 years old. And I remember watching it. My parents watched it. My older sister loved it, but I wasn't quite able to, understand everything that was going on. I just remember seeing these guys getting arrested. And yeah, so whenever I saw a Chris Hansen meme, I'd understand what it was about, but I didn't really know. Uh, One day I just happened to type in "To Catch a Predator" on YouTube, and I found Mr. Gigi's videos, and I probably watched that whole series 20 times through and just got bored with it. Now, he initially vaguely discussed like the Church of God and everything in the Bowling Green episode, but he just kind of made it seem like people just made photoshops, little memes about Lauren. I was like, oh, okay, that's fine, because Lauren didn't really stand out to me. And the person who stood out to me the most was Dustin McFedrich.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, so after I wanted more context, I eventually got bored of just the Predator Chronicles. I basically memorized each punchline at that point, but I typed in his name and I came across your analysis of his interview. The first part, well, interrogation interview makes it sound less criminal. Um,
Yes, good way of putting it.
yeah, when I went to look for the second part, I went to your channel. I saw all this stuff about Lauren, and I was like, well, maybe this just isn't just photoshops and punchlines. Maybe there's something a little more to it. And I always liked your point of view based on the Dustin McFedrich thing. So I started watching your videos, and then I moved on into listening to the phone calls. There's the whole Betty situation. I was just blown away by everything that was about this guy. Like it was insane. But yeah, that's basically what brought me here.
Cool. That's an interesting story because a lot of people, I've spoke to a lot of people, and Lorne didn't stand out to them initially. I'm not just saying this, for that kind of effect. He did stand out to me quite dramatically, really, and mainly because of the content of his chat log about he seemed to genuinely be interested in marrying this girl. I was like, wow, this is amazing. I'd never seen anything like it before. I didn't think that such, because he appeared to have his faculties about him. He appeared to be not insane, is probably a good way of putting it. Because you would think that someone who would go down there would probably have some kind of serious mental problems. I mean, we've not been able to put our finger on that with Lorne, but that's
We
something
might
that we
be on
can.
so I didn't mean to cut you off there, but actually that's one thing I was wanting to bring up later, but I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, of course. I mean, it will. It's an interesting. It kind of goes in tandem with what we're talking about here, and I suppose I think it might have even been because you mentioned it when we spoke before we recorded this. Is that when I did the video about his relationship with his father and how I believe that had a massive impact on his behaviour and his psyche, and it's basically my. Well, it's not just my belief. It's been theorized by lots of people, but I think when you get down to it, when you really look at the situation, Lorne deep down feels worthless, and
Yeah,
that worthlessness fuels his behavior. It's the fuel for his crazy behavior. He acts. Everything he does is based upon fear. We have a tendency nowadays to overanalyze people's behavior, and you can find conditions, ADHD, CDBT, and all this bollocks, and you can really overdo it. But you can also,
definitely.
you can also look at it very simply. And every decision that anybody ever makes ever is either based on fear or love. It's as simple as that. There's no. You can obviously have variations of it, but if you have, I mean, that's a topic for another time. But I suppose the point that I've always tried to make is that I don't think Lorne really truly knows what he's doing, and I understand why that might fuel anger in people, and that might be why you wanted to speak to me. Not that you was angry, but you wanted to, discuss it. Is something a spiritual teacher said that I follow, and he said, "Without awareness, there is no free will." Now, I spoke to Tiffany about this, and she said that Lorne fully knows what he's doing with regard to his predatory behaviour, and he does on that level. He knows that what he's doing is wrong, but he doesn't understand his own mind structures. He doesn't understand where his motivations come from to do the actions that he does. Does that make any sense?
Definitely, definitely, and I guess maybe that's one of our first disagreements. Because I hear brief moments where we do feel like he breaks down in the phone calls, and we understand. He understands. There's one call with Winnie that he broke down and said, "You're right. I hate myself for what I did. I can't forgive myself, and that's why I'm self-destructive." In Lorne words, not normal English, but and he always reverts right back, and I feel like that's a problem. Now I can't. I don't have my doctorate or anything, so I can't say this. I haven't finished graduating, so I can't say this with like certain clinical terms or anything, because you can never really. People do try to diagnose people, but you can't really do that unless you sit down with them. But Shin mentioned that he showed signs of psychopathy, and I think he was in the general correct area, but I think Lorne leans more towards antisocial personality disorder, or sociopathy, which it's more commonly known as in the common vernacular. And you can just see it, like he has total delusions and irrational thinking. He's totally neurotic. He's unreliable. He's a liar. He has no remorse or shame. And what really separates sociopaths with psychopaths, most people don't know, because there's a lot of overlap. But psychopaths are generally more stable emotionally
Yeah.
and are able to have more of a normal life, basically. Sociopaths, and this fits Lauren to a T, are more rage prone. They're more erratic or emotionally. They tend to explode and have harder times with relationships. So I think he falls under that. And, he might also be on the autism spectrum, but like I said, you can't really diagnose somebody unless you sit down with them.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that we've never really been able to put our finger on what Lorne's conditions are, and I think what you've said there about that condition, you certainly would see him at. What did you call it? It's antisocial.
Uh, the clinical term for it is antisocial personality disorder, but it's the same as being a sociopath.
Right, yeah. I mean, I think that's probably the one I would say out of everything that we've spoke about, and I've heard videos people making, other people who do analysis, even what Nathaniel Trevor said years ago. I think most people agree that he is a sociopath. I know people like that. Someone who used to be, it probably still is a close friend. I've kind of had to distance myself from him because building an actual proper relationship where I could trust him was impossible. What used to happen is we had a very similar sense of humour, and we had such a great laugh together, but he would always revert every now and again to this bizarre situation where he just had to attack me outright, and he knew a lot of personal stuff about me, virtually everything, and he would just go out of his way to like try and psychologically destroy me. And I was like, initially I took it personally, and then I found out I did it to all his close friends, and now he hasn't got anybody left. And I think he's a completely different character to Lorne, but of course a lot of what you've said does ring true, because he can't. The thing is as well, if you think about all the catfishing, I don't know exactly what's going on with him at the minute, but there will always be someone somewhere. I don't know who it is or what's going on, but if I was going to put a bet on it, I'd say he was getting catfished again. From someone, because there will always be someone, and even I've mentioned this before. I don't agree with what's going on, but there's part of me that I'd fucking love to wind him up every day.
Exactly.
I mean,
I think it was. I'm sorry.
What was that? Sorry.
I think it was Batsby who said when she was reading his court transcript, somebody should knock on his door and say every day, Lorne Armstrong, in 2007, you traveled across state lines to engage in inappropriate contact with a minor. And it's like, yeah, it's like, and I guess it's a bit cynical, but part of you, especially people who maybe have their own issues, would love to see him put down like that every day. And I don't think that's necessarily right, but I understand
Well,
why.
It kind of is put down like that every day if you think about it. That's what the sex offender registry does, doesn't it?
Yeah, and he does it in his own mind to a certain extent when he can face what he does rarely. But
yeah, I find it interesting. It was something I was thinking about the other day. Oh, the reason I mentioned the catfishing is because that's all he's known for 15 years. If you think about the Amanda James thing, we can only have a timeline of when we think that happened. But basically, if we go back to, years before the chat log started and the Amanda James situation, all he's ever known is fake relationships. Fake relationships. Tony and Wendy, who, as I understand it, are just pissheads. They're just alcoholics, borderline, if not proper ones. That probably, without being too unfair, probably people you wouldn't want to hang about with unless you had Lorne's alcohol problem. And then his family. Exactly. That's it. He doesn't have any friends, does he? He doesn't have any friends. He's never had a girlfriend, and all his relationships are fake. So there's a massive issue there. The thing is with him, there's so many problems that he's got in his head that he would need to sort out, that it would take, it's like me and Shin talked about this in another video, he'd have to have a team of specialists around him for 24 hours, for weeks, just to get any progress. And even then it might not do, because it's like we've said, you can only get help if you're willing to do, put the work in.
Exactly. And going back to his catfish, I guess, again, to what possible mental disorders he has. We don't know how those catfish have affected him. Like, initially, I thought he might have a schizotypal personality disorder due to the paranoia he constantly has and the lack of close friends. But when you think about it, he does have every reason to be paranoid, what he's been through. I mean, that's his own doing, so I don't feel sorry for him. But he does in his own twisted way, he has reason to think the way he does.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, I'd like to do a video at some point about theorising what would happen if he was never catfished at all. Where would his life be? Would he be in a better position? Would he be in a worse position? It's kind of interesting, really. I find it very interesting that someone spent 15 years living what we would consider to be a fake life. Just nothing genuine about it. It's kind of crazy. I'm fucking amazed he's still able to function, and he's kind of not really. The last we heard, he's not really paying his own way, struggles to hold down jobs. I mean, there's millions of people like that in the world. The unemployable, as they once funnily said in The Simpsons when they were saying, "Who's up at this hour, angry loners? The unemployable alcoholics." He's one. Well, he's not unemployable, is he? He can hold down a job, but he's never going to get anywhere in a job, as he lacks the discipline. He's unreliable. He has a drink problem. There's so many things going on there. I'm more socially distanced than I have ever been in my life, and I'm kind of like, it's because of the circumstances, the job I do, and various other things. But I'm in a personal level, I'm adapting to that at the minute. But I'll always have friends around. There'll always be people I can rely on. But with him, he hasn't got anyone. Not one good friend. The only person, it's like when I went to court, the only person that was there, and it was really symbolic, was his mother. And she's only there out of obligation, and even she's sick of him. And it is all. The thing is, I'm not like, I know, like, sometimes when it would appear I'm trying to make excuses for his behaviour. Of course, I'm not. The way I look at it, and this is something I mentioned before, is I don't believe that humans like Lorne have free will. And this is a philosophical thing that people, some people would agree with me, some people wouldn't, is that when you are not fully aware of your own mind structures, you don't really understand how the human mind works. You don't understand your own being, shall we say, and you don't live a disciplined life. Your mind runs your life, and you don't even know what the fuck you're doing. Now, there's different ways of looking at that. Is that, yeah, you're saying, well, it's bullshit. He makes his own decisions. He knows what he's doing is wrong. Of course he does. But he's not in a position where he can do anything about it. In order for him, it's like what you said before about when he said whatever it was to someone about, I hate myself for it. And he snaps straight back to, and he did it with Tiffany, didn't he? He's like, he called himself a predator. And then he goes back to his old behaviour, because in order for him to change, he would have to go through so much hard work and suffering and really face up to the truth of him, and he can't do that. And it's the only way he'll move forward. So we don't feel sorry for him. He doesn't deserve sympathy. But it's about us understanding why people behave like that, and I don't view that as being evil. Do you understand what I mean?
I can understand why you say his decision making isn't evil, but I don't think that doesn't mean there's no evil. The act itself isn't evil just because he doesn't perceive it as being, if I understood you correctly there.
Yeah, I mean, we even spoke about this briefly before we did the video. I think you asked me what I believe evil was, and I think my response was somewhere along the lines of, even though I can't say, because, this is philosophical stuff, is I think it's acting in a totally selfish way without ever considering the impact on others. And I tried to say that, people do that all the time as a means of survival.
Yeah.
But there's a great video by somebody called, there's a channel on YouTube called actualize.org. I've spoken about it before. Brilliant. There's a video about 2.5 hours long about survival, and how everything that we do as humans is survival. Now, you would think, well, he's not surviving, is he? He can eat, he's not survival. But the human, it's all about, survival is all about striving to achieve better, because you want to be part of a bigger clan. You want more possessions. It's all about surviving in the human world. And Lorne, in his own twisted way, in his predatory behaviour, is survival. It's like, that's why he's called a predator, and he is one because he seeks the weaker prey and pounces on them, which is why he goes for the younger types. But it's his way. He thinks it's the only way he can reproduce, because he can't go for somebody of who can look after themselves, because they're too smart and they'll figure him out. So he has to go. He has to pick out the weak. You know, it's like we said in the streams. He's like the lion looking at the herd of wildebeest and trying to pick out the young calf who can't defend itself because it's away from, it's away from the herd. So I don't. The perspective I've got is I don't see that as being tangible evil. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I can understand what you're saying. I think most of what Lorne does is not maybe for his survival as in a living creature, but more survival of his ego.
Yeah, of course.
There's I don't know if you know about Carl Jung, but it's one of his most popular terms. It's called the shadow.
Course, yeah.
Or it's just basically the unconscious mind. It's your ego is the mask you present to the world, and your shadow is basically the real you. It's the reflection of that ego. And you talked about having a team of specialists surrounding Lorne to make him better. I really don't know how you could force him, because Carl Jung also spoke of having to integrate your shadow into your ego in order to become a complete person. I don't know how that would be possible short of large doses of psychedelic drugs or extreme shock therapy. Like, I don't think traditional talking will work for him at this point.
No,
because I
definitely not. Definitely not.
I don't know. And I guess that's the sad part. I like to say, oh, look at this asshole, look at what he's doing. But it's like, is there really a way out for him? I don't think there is. And in a way, you kind of want to feel sorry for him, but you shouldn't.
No, you shouldn't. I once in a video called him a victim, and I shouldn't have done. I called him a victim of life. I didn't mean that. I don't mean what I mean is this is the way I look at it. Of all humans, right? We're all born of a pure heart, and we come into this world, and from the very second we enter this world, the stimuli that we're subjected to shapes the very neural patterns and how our brain grows. Everything. The language you hear, the emotions you pick up in the room, the light, the air quality, the food that you're ingesting, it just shapes everything. So we all have a pure heart, and it's malleable, and it all changes. And depending on, your environment, and then as you get a little older, you develop an ego, and then you start making decisions based on what you have been told is right and wrong. And that will, you'll make some poor decisions. Some people will make good ones, and they'll grow up and have a functionable life. And some people will make very poor ones, and they'll be bullied. And it's just there's an infinite amount of decisions and circumstances that shape how a person ends up being. And I think that Lorne, of course, he's always, you see, it's a difficult thing to express, because he always has the Betty situation is a fucking great example. He had the ability to do the right thing, and he chose not to because he's a selfish idiot. But he's become that through his own choices. But if he'd have, I mean, can we agree that he had a reasonably tough upbringing with the circumstances that he was in?
Oh, definitely. But I kind of want to pause you for a minute and go back. You said earlier that you think we're all born fundamentally with a pure heart. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, I feel like that's our first initial disagreement. I think that all humans have the capability of evil, but question is, what makes you evil? Do you have the capacity to do it? For example, earlier we talked about Ted Bundy,
Yes.
and he believed he grew up in a perfectly normal home. Now, when you ask everybody around him, it was not. His grandfather could have possibly have been his father. Uh, his grandfather was an alcoholic, beat his grandmother, his mother, and it was just a horrible situation. But he thought everything was fine. That's his perspective. So, from his perspective, there's no reason he should have turned out the way he did, but yet he did. I think he was born not only the capability, but the ingrown capacity to do evil acts. And we kind of agree on, if we had to define evil, what it would be. My definition was gratification at the expense of others' suffering. And
It's probably a better way of putting it, actually.
exactly. And I feel like what makes Lorne Border evil is he's aware of how he harms other people, but he doesn't care. Now, is it fair to put him in the same category as Ted Bundy? No, I'm not going to say that. That's stretching the truth quite a mile or two. But he's aware, like I don't know if you knew this, but when his uncle died, his mother received $5,000 from that, and he took that. And we already know her financial situation, and he didn't care. It was what he needed, and he didn't care about the weight he imposed upon his mother. And go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I didn't want to interrupt you then. I apologise. But I agree with you. It's a strange thing. I kind of agree with you, and I still believe it's about perspective. So, of course, he does these terrible things. He's aware of what he's doing. On one level, he's aware that his actions are wrong. But I believe that some people, well, it's true, some people don't have the ability to empathise. Now, it's theorised that some people are born without empathy. Some people are empathetic creatures and some are not. Some say empaths. It also could be, and this is theorised as well by, people that obviously know a lot more than me, is that empathy can be kind of kicked out of you. I'm not saying that's the case with Lorne. I'm just saying that it's true of some people. So, for instance, if you go through extreme situations in your life, extreme trauma, it could be that you no longer have the ability to empathise because you're existing entirely within your pain. And I've been in that situation, and the reason that I don't see evil as being tangible is because I have done and thought things which will be considered evil. I have said and done things to people, not like fucking murdered anybody or anything, or sexually abused anybody, but the things that I have said and the judgments that I have made about people could be considered evil. I know I'm not, and I recognise why I did what I did, because I've done enough self-discovery to know why certain patterns in me manifested. And I'm lucky to be able to do that, is because I have a certain degree of intelligence in order to do that, and I have had the time and the means to do this kind of self actualization, or whatever you want to call it. I don't think that Lorne is in a position to do that. Really.
Why do you feel that way?
He's gone too far. His whole sort of personality, if you will, is so fickle. It's the reason I think that we're drawn to him. He's kind of like not a real person in a way. He's more like a cartoon character, like very two-dimensional. And even I sort of sensed that when I was in the courtroom with him. It was almost like there was like a surreal nature to what was going on. And I get that sense that his psyche is so fickle for whatever reason, whether it's due to some kind of abnormality, whether it's due to the conditions that we spoke about. I don't think he has that ability. And that's the way I kind of look at it, really. It's like he's got the ability to do the right thing, but it's never going to happen without any kind of... I mean, I don't know, like you said, I don't know what it would take. But I suppose the difference... I believe that I do agree that his actions are evil from a certain perspective. But that evil has only arisen because of... He's ran by his mind that he doesn't quite understand. I don't believe that humans... And this is just Lorne. It's not the same for every single person who does evil. There's many different aspects of it. I don't believe he has the awareness to fully grasp it, although I understand why. It's difficult for me to convey it precisely, because if I was listening to somebody else say this and I wasn't able to convey what my thoughts were, I'd get it why they would go, "You're full of shit."
Well, something I've always liked about your videos is, while we may not agree, you lay out a solid a straight logical line. I can follow you down to why you think that way. I feel like we fundamentally don't agree on that perspective. Like,
That's why I wanted you to come on, because it's fun. There's no point me prattling on videos on my own, you know, if I think I've got the answers, and not to have another perspective. So it's great that you kind of reached out to me.
Exactly. We see this problem a lot in the world now, especially with how socially tribal people have become. We don't want to question. We want to get in a certain group. We don't want to question our values, because that removes us from the group. And you said something earlier, and I wanted to say this. It's more commonly believed that sociopaths are created and psychopaths are born. So I think maybe to a certain extent you're correct that Lorne's upbringing could have caused this in a way, but I feel like human behavior would be more predictable to a certain science. It just came down to certain things like upbringing. And I feel like I might be spinning my wheels here. So, I don't know.
No. I suppose one way to look at... We spoke earlier about the pandemic, what's going on at the minute, and how people's behaviour is almost robotic, like so predictable, pathetic, really. People that have been panic buying toilet rolls, I don't think I'll ever fully be able to grasp that. But we spoke very briefly about... This is why I don't think people have free will. To be going out there panic buying toilet rolls, that just really fucking spells out to me just how stupid human beings can actually be. You know, there's no difference in supply and demand at the minute. There's no need for people to be in England to be panic buying things. And they just, you know, they don't really understand the situation, and they're running around and panic buying things. There's arguments in the street. There's people kicking off in supermarkets. It's like people don't have the ability to think for themselves. They're just run by the media. And it can happen. Something as simple as listening to the radio. I won't listen to the radio because most radio stations have got far too many adverts. And what happens is, if you listen to those advertisements, even though it might seem like harmless, it deprograms you or programs you, and you will hum that tune and you'll think about that product, and you don't need to know. It's polluting your mind. And it's totally like opposite to who we are fundamentally as beings. I mean, I have deep spiritual right. 'Cause we both got experience with psychedelics, which some people, you know, I think are an amazing technology if used professionally and legally, which it can happen. And that I've had some insights and experiences which I cannot put into words, and which is for another time. I mean, you've had to the point where I know that the existence that we live in isn't what we believe it to be. The way our minds interpret things and things like you've had some experience with those as well, haven't you?
Certainly. I feel like, I mean, and how do you put experiences like that into words? Like that, it's like words aren't good enough.
No.
But I mean, I feel like just humans in general, we kind of have to dumb things down for the masses. And I guess in a way, I understand why you're saying Lorne is less evolved. Certainly, on a like if we were to have a meter to read enlightenment, he's down to zero. He's running out of gas there.
Yeah.
It's like I feel like all humans could benefit from that,
From
but
what?
certain shamanic experiences,
Oh,
however you may reach
100%.
that.
100%. When I had mine, one of the insights that I got was everybody needs to do this because it can be dangerous because it makes you realise. I remember going through it and staring at my phone, and it was an addiction impulse that I had to stare at my phone like we all do. And I just remember thinking, why the fuck have you been doing this? That phone has got nothing to do with the person, the true being that I am. And we're getting really deep into it now, but I don't think there was any. I think it was always going to go this way. But one of the insights and realizations that I have, and obviously if you're an atheist and whatnot, is that there is no death. There is no death. There is no, the true essence that we are is undefinable.
Exactly.
In this present term.
I mean, if you think about it, your body is composed of molecules that are made out of atoms that have been around since the beginning of time. And I know we're about to get a little scientific and nerdy here, but the law of conservation of matter says matter cannot be created nor destroyed; it can only change form. And it's also true that all matter is energy. So whatever energy is in the matter that created you does not disappear simply because you die. You simply change form. And I guess I don't necessarily have an idea of God as this guy in a robe sitting up in the clouds, but I do feel like there's this universal energy that we can all tap into to achieve enlightenment, but we have to choose to do so. And I guess bringing it back to Lorne, he has the capability, but does he have the capacity?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're at a unique position as humans now, and this is why I believe everybody should use this time and lockdown wherever you are. If you're not allowed to do what you usually do, to use it to please kind of use it efficiently. Don't drink and do the shit you would have done anyway. Meditate or learn yoga or something because there's such an amazing opportunity and. I think that we all have that ability. It's inherent to who we are, but your mind covers it up with judgments and memories and anticipation and all kinds of crazy shit. And the way, I mean, good and evil is spoke about in the very beginning of the Bible when it says that, we when we ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, that's when we lost paradise, was kicked out of the Garden of Eden. And that just basically means, very simply, when your mind started making judgments and saying, this is good, that's good. And it goes back to, like, if you look at, I watch a shitload of nature videos, like wildlife documentaries. I'm obsessed with wild dogs at the minute. It sounds really fucking weird, but I find them such interesting creatures because they're genetically virtually identical to the domestic dogs. And everybody loves dogs. And why do people love dogs? Because they are the friendliest, amazing creatures in the world. They, the man's best friend. It's, that's what they say, and it's very true. And my mate Shin fucking loves dogs. He's always sharing dog videos on Facebook. And these wild dogs, the way that they hunt is as vicious as anything you could possibly imagine, and they don't kill the prey immediately. They hunt in packs. They have a very complicated social structure, and they don't kill their animals, the prey, straight away like a lion do. They eat them alive, and these animals go through unbearable suffering. Now, you could look at that and say that's evil. And what's interesting is you read the comments of YouTube videos, and you get people saying, them dogs are evil, they should be shot. They don't know that they haven't got the level of awareness to know that what they're doing is causing suffering. Now, I know what people would... You could transfer that to some creatures like Lorne. Lorne doesn't have that ability to empathise. Now, he's got more awareness than a fucking dog, of course. But he said something very interesting once about children can love as well, I think he said, in relation to victim number one. And that says to me that he's just... It's like studying a caveman. Do you know what I mean? It's like... Do you understand the comparison I'm trying to get? It's like if you was going to look at evil and you say, well, those dogs are not... It looks inherently evil what they're doing, especially when they're such lovable creatures. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay. I understand what you're saying. I guess I have to yield the floor to you on that. But going back to the whole victim number one thing, the fact that he even said that makes me question how much more is there underneath the surface, because we're never going to get a real answer. Like,
oh no,
short of torturing him, we're not going to get a real answer to this.
And even then, you wouldn't, because he doesn't know himself. He doesn't even know him. He knows what he's doing is wrong, and he knows he's a shitbag. I know that, but he doesn't understand why he does what he does. Really, I mean, the thing is, the way I think about it, when I've done the terrible things that I've done. The reason that I did them is because I was living through my pain. It wasn't me that was making the decisions. It was the pain. Like when you have a sudden burst of anger and you say something ridiculous or you punch someone or whatever, that anger becomes you. And unless you're really enlightened and conscious and can manage it, it will always get the better of you. Like road rage. We all have it. It's fucking remarkable, isn't it?
Right.
And that's what people... Some people like Lorne are like, they live entirely through pain. And I know people like that I know how they've been brought up, and I don't put any judgment on them because I know what terrible things they've had to endure. And when they behave in certain ways, it doesn't affect me because I know why they do what they do. And I always relate it to myself, because if someone was to judge me and cast judgment upon me, I'd be fucked. And I've not done anything near as bad as what Lorne has. But I'm lucky enough to be able to examine past behaviours. He can't do that fully. You probably disagree with me. You probably think he has got that ability, don't you?
I think he does have the ability, but I guess... You've kind of started to shift my perspective. Does he have the capacity to? And I'm starting to think maybe you're right. Maybe I didn't fully understand your viewpoint. Maybe he doesn't have that capability. Well, not that capacity, but he does have the ability. And the question is, what separates people like Lorne from reaching into that universal energy and pulling that knowledge out? Because anyone...
I think it's just fear. I've had to face up to some horrible truths and go through an unbelievable amount of suffering to get to where I am now, and I'm nowhere near where I should be. If you had Lorne's past, which neither of us would do because we're lucky enough not to... Luck might not be the right word. Fortunate enough to have not been in a position where we needed to do anything like that. But supposing you had Lorne's past to look back on, how could you face up to doing that? How could you look at that chat log and say and look at what you did and think, fucking hell? How do you face up to that? How do you face up to turning up to screw a child? How do you face up to robbing an old couple of the life savings? And I'm not saying he doesn't deserve to be in the position, because the thing is, life's fucking hard for everybody. And if you don't put the work in, you're going to get fucking nowhere. And he's not willing to do it. But I don't think it's because he's evil. I don't think it's because anybody's evil. I think it's because of fear.
Understandable. I don't know if this was in the phone call we had before this recording, but we talked about how after reaching a point where you're more enlightened personally, you go back to old friends, old situations, and you see how not only how much you've changed, but you feel sorrow for the fact that that situation or that person hasn't changed. And I guess I understand where you're coming from when you're slightly more sympathetic to Lorne. And I think it's shit that people are just saying, oh, you're standing up for a pedophile. Like, no. I feel like
that's not happened in a while, to be fair. It's just that people are more respectable with disagreeing with me these days. A bit like you know, you kind of reached out and said, well, you know, I don't necessarily agree with everything you said, and that's great. But every now and again, someone in the comments will go, you're full of shit. But I genuinely think the people that have done that are probably the ones that have been a victim or know someone who's been the victim of sexual abuse. And when they're saying things like that, emotion is taking over, like the pain of what's happened. And there's been people that we've spoke to. I mean, there's no point, you know, Tiffany had someone in her family who went through it, and she got very emotional in a video once, and it was a kind of profound moment for me. Well, not for me, but I meant to listen to it.
Oh,
you know, it was for her to display, even though she fucked around with Lorne for a bit, even for her to display some kind of part of her that wanted to straighten this guy out, I thought was kind of remarkable, really.
Oh, definitely. It's definitely a testament to her character. Going back to how can Lorne face what he's done? Like, it certainly has to be a difficult thing. I mean, in his situation, he faces it with the promise of getting a Debbie snatch, but you look back on just how quickly he reverts back, and we know it's not genuine. So, and I guess I kind of went off on a side tangent there, but it's like it was a profound thing hearing Tiffany break down like that.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to drag other people's names in the mud, but it certainly I understand why certain hatred comes, because there are people who have been victimized in this community, and I guess in a way it's easier for them to hate than to realize. Like, I don't blame the snake. I don't consider snakes as bad things, because, you know, snakes bite. That's what they do. And I don't feel like you should act surprised. You try to pick up a rattlesnake and it bites you. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, and, of course.
You know, I feel like it's easier to put ourselves in these mental traps and pick up that snake rather than realize, you know, it's probably better just walk around.
Of course, and the thing is, I'm able to say all these things about Lorne and do all this, you know, because I'm not emotionally affected, so I don't know anybody close that's been through such things apart from people's indirectly. So I've got no history with it in my family, so I can look at it objectively, where some people don't have that luxury, and that. I must always, and we must always understand that. And in other words, you know, it's very easy for me to prattle on about forgiveness and fucking understanding people's behaviour. But there's sometimes when someone does something wrong to me, like there's a fucking neighbour that I can't stand because he's being noisy, I immediately fucking attack them. You know what I mean? It's like, and call them names, and I'm forgetting about the fact that it's just the conditioned mind, because it's affecting me. So it's very easy for me to stand on a pedestal and start saying, you know, it's when we become personally affected by it. It's like, do you understand what I mean? But I can stand back and look at things, and I have certain beliefs, and Lorne's an interesting character. I can't believe that I'm still making these type of videos about him. Years later, it's kind of fascinating, really.
I guess it's a testament to how strange his character is that appearing on a show for 2 minutes 15 years ago now.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, it wasn't. I think it was because we had the chat log. I think that was the catalyst for it. Of course, the footage was great, but I don't think it had stood out unless the chat log was available. And you read that chat log, and you're like, "This thing's fucking amazing." There's so much you can gain from it. It gives us massive insights into his character, and you're like, "Fucking hell, do people really exist like this?" He's a very strange enigma. He really, really is. But we've been going. We may have to do another one of these because I'm quite happy with the way that this has gone. Really, I think we've both made good points and we've kind of probably agreed with each other more than we thought we would. That's what I find that usually happens in these scenarios.
Yeah, exactly. This has definitely been fun. I'd love to do a part two, and hopefully I'll plan it out a little bit better.
I think it's flowed quite well, really. It's difficult. It's difficult to keep things like this structured when we're talking about. So neither of us are, trained scientists, unless there's something you've not told me.
I have a confession.
Well,
I've been hacking corporate and government systems all around the country, all around the world.
Cool. Well, we're gonna have to continue this conversation then, because I need to know.
Time, but he'll get it.
Hey, just imagine if we did, and the fucking fun we could have fucking around with Lorne and his details, and I put £1 million in his bank account, make him think he was rich, and then just before he was going to buy anything, I just take it away from him, and there'd be nothing there. It'd just be so funny.
Have you seen those videos where people they'll like DVR the winning lottery numbers, then they'll go buy that ticket the next day, but play it for like their roommate or whatever. You'll see the red. Like, oh my god! I just won $40 billion. That's like what, 30 billion pounds? I don't know.
That's cruel.
Yeah.
That's cruel but funny. Yeah, there's all kinds of those videos, isn't there, on YouTube? Anyway, dude, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I appreciate you reaching out to me. I think hopefully people will enjoy this.
Oh yeah, definitely. It was fun.
So thanks for joining me, dude. Hopefully we'll do a part 2 soon. We could talk about these kind of things forever. And guys in the chat, in the comments, please let me know what you think. Anything that I've said that you disagree with, or whatever, or anything, any insights that you want to offer, or please let me know if you've enjoyed it. And Trey, thanks for joining me, mate. Really appreciate it. And guys, I hope you're staying safe during these very bizarre times, and I'll catch up with you soon.